going to the arch rivals, if you say so, or the main competition for a Super Bowl berth, but it's also a circumstance in which one could pick the mind of Harrison about defensive tendencies, or possibly, even because he had fallen to second string in Pittsburgh, he had played in practice against the first-team offense, and give his insights there to the New England Patriots, who will likely be hosting the AFC Championship game if it gets to that point. Well, I'm going to be talking to my friend Chris Adamski. He writes for TribLive.com, covers the Pittsburgh Steelers up in Pittsburgh. He took over my beat years and years ago, and I'm going to be talking to him he's inside the locker room. There are a lot of people buzzing about inside the Steelers locker room, saying that Harrison was something of a clubhouse cancer, and this may have led to his release despite his longevity with the franchise, save for 1 year with the Cincinnati Bengals. On the other hand, I have been, over the years, critical of Mike Tomlin for greasing the skids for his veterans, and I do see some paths to that coaching insight that have resulted themselves here, which may have made Harrison the said bad apple that then was ripe. Now there's an oxymoron, for being released and being sent to the New England Patriots. By the way, Harrison, right before this show went on the air, Bleacher Report released a story that James Harrison had penned a lengthy letter regarding his status with the Steelers, the criticisms, basically saying, I didn't re-sign with the Steelers to sit. All right. But that's the national sports perspective that we can give you on Tri-City Sports Now. We also happen to give you the local perspective, and I think what's important better than anyone. I think I'm very proud of our ETSU coverage. And we're going to have on Steve Forbes at 1 p.m. talking about the Bucs' 19-point victory against Tusculum that some are unsatisfied with. But they have won 7 of 8 going into the Southern Conference season, and so as a result, things are looking up and maybe a little bit better than advertised as the 9-4 Buccaneers attempt to repeat as Southern Conference champions both in the regular season and certainly in the tournament, thus making their second consecutive NCAA bid, something that they have not done since 2003 and 2004 under Ed DeChillis and Murray Bartow, the predecessors of Steve Forbes, who, by the way, is now, in the history of ETSU basketball, has the highest winning percentage ever. Ever. I'll be talking a little bit, Virginia Tech played a bowl game yesterday. It's one of the Who Cares Bowls. There have been so many Who Cares Bowls that the fact that the national championship playoffs begin on January 1st, I think are somewhat forgotten to a certain extent. And it's scary, but there's so much bad bowl game that you lose sight of the fact that Alabama and Clemson are playing each other once again in what's become a real... this is going to go down. These 3 Alabama-Clemson postseason games in the playoffs, I compared it to back in the 1970s, the Steelers and Raiders playing with just about everything on the line back then in the 70s. But you know what? I think they played 5 straight years in the playoffs is what I'm trying to say. Okay, Alabama-Clemson meeting 3 straight years, and really the odds, I think, are longer of teams meeting 3 straight years in the college football playoffs than they are back when of teams in the NFL playoffs meeting for 5 straight years. Simply more teams in college football than in the NFL, and certainly when there were only, pre-expansion. There were 26 teams back then in the NFL. So do the math on that one. I also will be talking a little bit about the bowl games. We've got a Brave story. I did not get to it. Could Josh Dobbs, another Steelers story, get his first start for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Well, he won't get a start, but could he make his professional debut this week against the Browns. There's a possibility. And you know what? Bad news for Tennessee Titans fans. The Jaguars say they'll play their starters against the Titans. Why? Stupidity. Especially when you don't have a bye. I've got an insight on that as well. But this is the last show of 2017. And it's time for Marky's monologue and talking about the year in sports in the Tri-Cities in 2017. And when I talk about sports in the Tri-Cities, I mean in the Tri-Cities. I mean, Tennessee gave us incredible storylines from their football program. When you lose, you tend to have really good storylines. When you win, yeah, they can be good, but there's not that friction. There's not that, I'll tell you who should be playing quarterback. There's not that debate. There's not the debate of, should this coach really be here? There's a lot of, isn't everything wonderful? And from a journalistic standpoint, and it's sad, and this is one of the reasons I think that, we have so much, criticism of the media, it's not as sexy a story. Good media types, without being shills, can make the winning team into the sexy story. I mean, look at what's going on in Pittsburgh, and for that matter, New England. James Harrison makes the two winners a sexy story. Landry Jones gets the start against the Cleveland Browns, who are probably going to go 0-16. That's not so juicy. Basically, it just says that the Cleveland Browns stink, which we know. But let's take a look, because in the next hour, I will be talking to Steve Forbes, head men's basketball coach of East Tennessee State. And initially, I was thinking, used to be Sports Talk Magazine, which I was a columnist for and a feature writer years ago. We did a Sports Person of the Year. I didn't always agree with it. Truth be told, sometimes it was influenced by who would sponsor the paper. Oh, yeah. But on this, the final Tri-City Sports Now of 2017, I thought of who would we name as the Tri-City Sports Person of the Year in 2017. And the first person that I thought of was Steve Forbes, perhaps because he's going to be my guest at 1 o'clock. But then I started thinking, wait a minute, what about Kyle Busch? Because even though he's from Las Vegas, what he did in August in Bristol, winning all 3 races, it's not unprecedented, because he did it in 2010, but I think from a statistical point of view, it's more impressive to win all 3 races in Bristol in August than maybe make the NCAA tournament at ETSU. I mean, ETSU is not a stranger to the NCAA tournament. And ETSU did not win a game in the NCAAs, which may have boosted Forbes' chances. So I was thinking, if I had to choose a sports person of the year, it might be just for that one event. The only reason that I wouldn't is Kyle Busch really a Tri-Cities sports figure? And that's a big question. Of course, if we're doing that, and that's the criteria, then it would be difficult for NASCAR to be named as, sports person of the year in the Tri-Cities, if such a, I'll make an unofficial award here. But I could also make the argument, that Forbes is from Iowa. He's a Tri-Cities sports figure. That's undeniable. Is Busch? No, but he had his success at the Tri-Cities. How do you weigh that? So I won't name here on the show who the Tri-Cities Sports Person of the Year is. Heck, we might want to have a vote on that somehow. But what I will say is, it comes down to, is Kyle Busch a Tri-Cities sports figure? That's the question that I would ask here. Now, the year in sports locally was not as glamorous as 2016. I'm sorry, it just wasn't. There was no Battle of Bristol. The Tennessee Volunteers basketball team, let alone the football team, did not play in the Tri-Cities against ETSU. And even the Lady Vols, remember, they played in the Mini-Dome back in 2016 against the Bucks, or the Lady Bucks. The Old Dominion Monarchs came into Brooks Gym last year, as a matter of fact. The Bucks football program, they went from 5-6 to 4-7, and lost their head coach. The baseball coach, Tony Skoll, left for the Citadel. Local teams in holiday basketball tournaments continue to struggle. Jason Witten went from Hall of Fame tight end on the best team in the National Football Conference in 2016 to old tight end on a team that may finish 500 this year. Cody Sensabaugh proved to be a journeyman, his cousin from a successful and an outspoken coach that I like to a political candidate. Maybe that's a positive. I actually think it is. Justin Grimm, though, he spent most of the year in the minor leagues. Daniel Norris spent his time on the disabled list. Billy Wagner continued to be not a prime Hall of Fame candidate for Cooperstown, but a fringe one. The Elizabethton Twins got more attention from stadium issues than they did for winning the championship of the Appalachian League. And are the Reds going to replace the Astros or not? What's up with that? That's in Greenville. On the other hand, let's look at Greenville. It's a pretty good year in Greene County for high school sports. In girls basketball, South Greene, they restored past glories by winning the state girls basketball championship, or should I say female championship in this age of political correctness. In football, the Greenville Green Devils, they're the state champions again and appear to have something of a dynasty, perhaps not as imposing as the one in Maryville. What football dynasty in the prep ranks is, but you've also got to look at the fact that, this is something that hasn't happened in this area at least since the early 70s in Tennessee High. And even that program only won 2 state championships, whereas Greenville in this decade has now won 3. I thought the Lady Bucks, they're making a statement with the tough schedule that they're playing, and I applaud it. Now, I realize the record right now is a losing one, but there's some statement being made by playing and having a respectable record when you're taking on Tennessee and NC State and Michigan State and all comers. You're trying to build a program. I really applaud Brittany Ezel that, and I think the result and the reaction is more positive to have a more glamorous program playing the major programs than maybe some easy victories against minor programs who don't really have a very good women's basketball program. I think that ETSU making the NCAA tournament, that was definitely a positive, even though they did blow their lead in the second half and wound up losing by 15 to Florida. Gators went on to the Elite Eight. What do we look for in 2018? Perhaps a repeat of a state championship in Greenville for the Green Devils and on the gridiron. How about a continued resurgence for ETSU sports? After all, Randy Sanders now in charge of the football program. What's this? He signed a couple of JUCOs. Immediate help that was needed for the ETSU Buccaneers. Jerry Bonkowski of NBCSports.com has mentioned Bristol as a possible venue for an all-star race, which would go hand in hand with the comments after the Battle of Bristol by track officials that they were looking to have similar major events at the track and keep it relevant as NASCAR moves from small markets to larger ones. Here are some storylines to watch. Is Steve Forbes going to be the coach at ETSU next year? Nobody knows now. It would be a waste of time to ask him right now. What's he going to say? Oh, yeah, I want to get out of here. But he did interview with New Mexico last offseason. My take has been that perhaps it would actually behoove for the future of ETSU in a bizarre way at his age for the Bucks to miss the NCAAs this year. Having a strong team, but not one that goes back to the big dance. Why? That makes Forbes that less of an attractive candidate, as he is a 50-something coach, to major programs. And as a result, back-to-back NCAA berths at ETSU. Maybe you do go to another program. An NIT berth this year. Also ran status, losing somewhere in the SoCon tournament early, but at posting a 20-victory season. That speaks well of ETSU for the future. Or you can rebound from that. Heck, how many starters are they losing? I think only one. How will Randy Sanders do as the ETSU football coach? How will Joe Panucci do as he attempts to resurrect the baseball program that was largely a loser under Tony Skoll despite new facilities? Will the spring race in Bristol continue to be an afterthought, or will the attendance increase? What about the night race in August? Will soccer continue to grow in the area with the success of goalkeeper Johnny Sutherland at ETSU? Will the Otters flourish or continue to struggle? Could a Nashville MLS franchise result in a USL franchise for the Tri-Cities? With the purchase of the twins, Elizabethan twins, by Boyd Sparts, will there be stability and professionalism from the franchise? Would still be calling the front office is getting the Parks and Rec? Well, that probably won't be the case, and an unreturned phone call. But the thing is, will the Appalachian League continue to be mom and pop, or will the Boyd Sports of the world give it a professional standard it so desperately needs? And it's one of the reasons why I love baseball. I like a lot of the people in the Appalachian League, but I do see it as being a professional sports league in the Tri-Cities that often isn't professionally run. Former ETSU athletic director Richard Stander spoke with me and said, long-term goal for ETSU athletics, a new arena for the basketball program. Will that kickstart in 2018? Will Scott Carter eventually see that that's the natural progression for the program and spearhead a movement that would be the single greatest cultural addition to the area imaginable? With concerts, events, minor pro sports coming to the area, something for everyone. Or will the Bucks continue to play on a high school campus with nothing to do around it and champion the sightlines of the venue? Will Gerald Sensabaugh return to be the football coach at David Crockett? Or will he be Sullivan County's mayor? Could he do both? Will Jason Witten return to the Cowboys next year? Will the media around here continue to be apologists? Or will the flavor of this program be embraced by the community, leading to a cultural shift on the way that sports are analyzed and viewed in the area? It's a cliche, but 2018 will be an exciting time for sure. Tri-City Sports Now will come back, tell you about the roster move of the Atlanta Braves. Didn't get to it yesterday, gonna get to it now. It involves Korea. Tri-City Sports Now.